She healed the Alpha King's wounds in secret. Months later, his wolf knew she was his mate. Nobody knew her name in the palace. That was exactly how she wanted it. Her name was Nara. She worked in the royal infirmary, in the back, where the senior healers didn't bother to look. She was not the best healer in the kingdom. She would never claim that. But she was careful. She was quiet. And when things went wrong in the middle of the night and everyone else panicked, she stayed steady. That was the thing about Nara. She did not fall apart. Not for anyone. She had been at the palace for 3 years before any of this started. 3 years of changing bandages, mixing medicines, and keeping her head down. She had learned very early that in a palace full of powerful people, the safest place to be was invisible. So she made herself invisible. She was good at it. Then one night, everything changed. It started 6 months ago, when she overheard something she was not supposed to hear. 2 senior healers, talking in low voices near the medicine storage room, saying that the Alpha King had been badly injured in an ambush at the Peace Summit. A blade with silver in it, the worst kind of wound for a wolf shifter. His body was fighting it, but slowly, and the healers assigned to him kept rotating because no one was allowed to see the full extent of his condition. The court could not know. If the enemy kingdoms found out the Alpha King was weak, the wolves would be seen as an easy target. So it was all being kept completely secret. Nara should have walked away, she knew that. But she had spent the last hour working on a compound, a specific mixture of root extracts and mineral salts that she'd been researching for months, that she believed could help speed healing in silver-poisoned wounds. She had never had a reason to test it, until now. She did not think too hard about what she did next. Thinking too hard would have stopped her. She packed her medicine kit, waited until the clock struck 2 in the morning, and walked to the east wing of the palace. The guard at the door stopped her. She told him she was the replacement healer, sent by the head physician. It was a lie. She was counting on the fact that at 2 in the morning, no one was going to make a call to verify. The guard looked at her for a long moment, then stepped aside. The room inside was dark. She could barely see anything. And then a voice came from the shadows, deep, quiet, and completely controlled even through what had to be real pain. Leave the lights off. She did. She worked in the dark, by feel and memory, the way she'd trained herself to do years ago. She didn't ask his name, he didn't ask hers. She cleaned the wound, applied the compound, redressed everything carefully, and left. It took 40 minutes. Neither of them said another word. She went back the next night, and the night after that. For months, that was their routine. 2 in the morning, dark room, 40 minutes of silence, give or take. She would work, and he would let her. And sometimes, very rarely, one of them would say something. Not much, just a few words. She noticed early on that he never asked anything personal. He asked about the medicine once, what was in it, why she'd chosen those ingredients. She explained, and he listened in a way that made her feel like he actually understood. Not many people listened like that. He was healing, she could tell. The wound was closing, slowly but steadily. The compound was working. She felt a quiet pride in that, the kind she never got to feel at the infirmary, where nobody noticed what she did. What she did not let herself think about was how she felt walking into that dark room every night. How her whole body settled somehow, the way it did in very few places. How she had started looking forward to those 40 quiet minutes more than anything else in her day. She pushed those thoughts aside every time. She was a healer, he was a king. This was a job. That was all. Then one night, about 3 months in, something shifted. She had just finished redressing the wound and was packing her kit when he spoke. Not about the medicine, not about the wound. The northern border dispute, he said. What do you think about it? Nara paused. The northern border dispute had been the talk of the whole court for weeks. She had heard bits and pieces from healers who'd treated advisors after long meetings. She had her own thoughts about it. Thoughts she had never said out loud to anyone, because they were not the kind of thoughts a palace infirmary worker was supposed to have. She said them anyway. She told him that the way she saw it, the real problem wasn't the border itself. It was that both sides had stopped trusting the agreements they'd already made, and no new agreement was going to fix that. The trust had to come first. The territory could be sorted after. There was a silence that went on long enough that she wondered if she'd said something wrong. Then he said, "You don't speak like a servant. she said. You don't speak like a king. She left earlier than usual that night. She walked back to the infirmary in the dark, and she told herself very firmly that she needed to be more careful. She needed to remember who she was and where she was. She needed to stop. She didn't stop. On his side of things, King Calum was not doing much better at being rational. He had accepted the anonymous healer arrangement out of necessity. He'd had no choice. But weeks in, he had started to notice things he had no business noticing. The way she moved was completely certain, even in the dark. She never fumbled, never second-guessed herself. Her hands were steady in a way that very few people's hands were when they were near him. Most people, even experienced soldiers, had a slight tension when they were in his presence. She didn't. It wasn't that she wasn't aware of who he was. He could tell she was. She just wasn't afraid of it. He found that extraordinary. He also noticed that when she was in the room, the part of him that was always calculating, always running through threats, options, political moves, decisions that needed to be made, went quiet. Just for those 40 minutes. He had not realized until it happened how exhausting it was to never be quiet. He started to look forward to it in a way that he didn't look at too carefully. His wolf was the less subtle of the two of them. His wolf had been restless for months, since before the wounding, honestly. But as the healing sessions went on, the restlessness shifted into something else. Something that paced, something that kept pulling his attention toward the door at 2 in the morning, before she even arrived. He told himself it was just the instinct responding to the healing. He told himself that with less and less conviction as time went on. About 5 months in, the wound had closed almost completely. She came to tell him that their sessions were nearly done. He was almost fully healed. She said it in the same calm, even voice she said everything, and she started to pack her kit. "Will you come back?" he asked. After this, she kept her hands busy with the kit. "There won't be a reason to," she said. "That's not what I asked." She didn't answer. She finished packing, said goodnight in her usual quiet way, and left. She made it to the servants' corridor before she had to stop and press her back against the cold stone wall and just breathe for a moment. Not because she was sad. She was not going to examine what she was. 3 weeks passed. She returned to her regular infirmary duties. Life went on. She was fine. Then there was a public ceremony in the palace courtyard, a healer's recognition gathering that the royal court attended. Nara was there because she had to be. She stood near the back, as always, in her white robe, among the other healers. She was not looking at the king when he walked out with his court. She felt it before she saw it. A shift in the air, like something very large and very certain had just locked into place. She looked up. King Calum had gone completely still in the middle of the courtyard. His advisors kept moving around him. He didn't move. His eyes were scanning the crowd, and then they stopped. On her. Nara did the only sensible thing she could think of. She turned and walked very calmly in the other direction. Later, she would find out what had happened in that moment from his side of things. His wolf, the animal instinct that ran deeper than thought in shifters, had recognized her scent across the courtyard. Pine resin and dried lavender. The same scent that had been in that dark room for 5 months. The same scent that his wolf had associated with the only real quiet he'd known in years. His wolf had gone completely still. Not the kind of still that meant calm. The kind of still that meant certainty. In their world, in the language of the wolf, there was only one thing that kind of certainty meant. Mate. 3 days after the ceremony, a royal guard appeared at the infirmary door. Nara was in the middle of restocking the herb shelves. She saw him and felt her stomach drop. The guard said the king was requesting her presence. "Which healer is he asking for?" she said, keeping her voice level. The guard paused, then said, "He said you would ask that. He said to tell you, the one who does not flinch." She put down the herbs. She straightened her robe. She went. They brought her to the east wing. She did not recognize it at first, because the lamps were on. She had never seen it with the lamps on. It looked like a different room entirely. There was a window she hadn't known was there. There was a chair near the far wall she had walked past 100 times in the dark without knowing. He was standing by the window. He turned when she entered. This was the first time they had seen each other. Actually seen each other. 5 months of nights together, and this was the first time. She found that she had not imagined him correctly. He was taller than she'd tracked by feel. His face was harder, but his eyes were not. She had not expected that. He said, "I have been trying to be rational about this. she said. How is that going? Terribly, he said. A pause. Then, tell me your name. Nara, she said. He told her what his wolf had done at the ceremony. He did not soften it or dress it up in court language. He said it plainly. His wolf had named her as his mate. That in their world, among their kind, that was not a feeling or a choice. It was a recognition. The wolf had known her before his mind had the words for it. Nara was quiet for a long moment. Then she said the first thing she always said when things got too large. The practical thing. I'm not of noble blood. I have no rank, no family with a name the court would recognize. I work in the back of the infirmary because that is where I belong in this palace, and that is what I am. Your court will not accept this. He said, my wolf is not asking the court. She looked at him. She said, and I am not, either. Neither of them moved. They had been in the same room 100 times, and never moved toward each other. They didn't now, either. They didn't have to. Something had already settled between them that had nothing to do with movement or words. It had been settling for 5 months in the dark. The court found out, of course. Courts always do. There was outrage from certain quarters. Noble families who had been angling for a match with the Alpha King for years were furious. There were whisper campaigns, and formal objections, and long meetings in rooms Nara was not invited to. She found out about most of it secondhand. She was still working her shifts at the infirmary. She hadn't asked to be moved or promoted, or given a different title. She was still Nara, doing the things she knew how to do. Calum had offered her more, and she had told him she'd get there on her own time. He had looked at her with an expression that she was starting to recognize as the one he wore when she surprised him, which was apparently often. He, for his part, met every objection from his court with the same calm. He did not argue. He did not explain himself at length. He simply did not change his mind, and eventually, the court ran out of arguments and moved on to other things, the way courts do. There is a thing that people in that kingdom say about the wolves. The wolf does not lie. You can reason your way around almost anything. You can convince yourself that what you feel is not what you feel, that what you want is not what you want, that the person sitting quietly in the dark room next to you is just doing a job and nothing more. But the wolf cannot be talked out of the truth. It recognized Nara the way the body recognizes sleep after a very long time awake, not with noise, not with fanfare, but with a complete and total settling that nothing else had ever produced. She had healed his body in the dark, in secret, for months. She hadn't asked for anything in return. She hadn't even told him her name. And all that time, without either of them knowing it, something far more than a wound had been quietly healing. Some things do not need to be named to be real. They just are.